Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Well, it was Valentine's Day this week and all about love. And I found this book called Unlikely Loves, and it's got a companion book called Unlikely Friendships. And it's about animals, okay, just to set this up. They're collections of animal stories by Jennifer Holland, who was a National Geographic photographer. Just delightful books. And it's a collection of stories about, bonds of friendship and care and nurturing that form across different species of animals. Like there was a story about a Great Dane in Canada, and there was a little orphan fawn that wandered into the yard, and the Dane adopted that fawn and mothered it until it was strong enough and fit enough to go back into the forest. But even as a mature adult deer, it would come back, for heartwarming reunions from time to time with the Dane. And then there was a story of the baby hippo Owen and the tortoise Mazee. And I just have to share this one with you. It's so sweet. So Owen was orphaned. In fact, it was a miracle he survived. Remember the Asian tsunami? Drowned his whole pod of hippos. And he was the only one that was surviving. And they brought him to, this was in Kenya, they brought him to an animal park there. And he chose to be his surrogate mother, Mazee, a 130-year-old male tortoise. And so Mazee taught Owen to be a really good giant tortoise. For a year and a half, they were inseparable. And fortunately, tortoises and hippos kind of do some of the same things, like laying around sunning themselves and swimming, right? Swimming, they got that in common, and also eating vegetation along the shore. It worked out. It worked out. Unlikely as that is. By the way, Owen and Mazee have their own website. Check it out. You got children's books and documentaries, and it's just so sweet. I want us to remember the capacity of these humble creatures of God. Their capacity to overcome and just overlook differences as we ourselves turn now to some of the hardest teachings in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Teachings about the commandments. And this section of the Sermon on the Mount is scholars call the antitheses, which it sounds like Jesus is almost contradicting each commandment. He goes through each one of them. But he's not contradicting them. If you look at them and listen to what he's saying, he'll say, you've heard it said that, but I say to you, he is intensifying them. And he's internalizing them because it's not enough to show God's love or to obey commandments. That's not enough. God wants to know what's brewing in our hearts, what's in our motivations and our thoughts and minds too. Jesus intensifies the commandments. Now, there are enough in our reading. You'll notice I didn't go through them all. I commend them to you to read each one of these, knowing this background. But I'm going to focus today on the commandment and Jesus' explanation of anger. He says, anger is murder. Even anger is murder. How is that? How do we understand that? Well, every week murders are reported in the news, right? And maybe you think, well, that terrible person, that person's a monster. You just think about what a degenerate, thoughts like that. But then look what Jesus has just done. What has he just done? Boy, you're feeling a little pinned because he just pinned us. He says that anger is murder. How is that? I had to think about that. Think about that with me. How is being angry with someone like killing them? Well, if we're angry with someone and we don't control it, You know, we can kill their spirit. We can say terrible things to another person and kill them that way. And then when we're finished with them, we can cut them off and never speak to them again, never talk to them again. That's like as if they're dead, isn't it? Jesus says anger is murder. Who's to say also what our anger or angry words, how that might contribute to a larger atmosphere, climate, culture, a poisonous one, where anger's solution is violence and murder. You see why Jesus wanted to know what was going on in our hearts? Because we have a crisis in our country, don't we? Gun violence. And I hope, and I know we're all troubled by it. And we're all thinking about the many different roots of this problem. Anger is one of them. What do we do with our anger? You know, the solution isn't violence. Anger is murder, Jesus says. We've got, you know, verdicts in on this is just the latest one, right? They call it the loud music trial, right? Just the latest one. And I don't know the details about it. I just thought about the participants. If they're, you know, this man, if he didn't like loud music, he could have just walked into the convenience store, right? Just walk away from it. And that car full of teens. I'm going to speak as a parent of teens. Don't you just pray that they'll get through their risk-taking behaviors. You just pray for God's mercy and protection that when they do stupid things, that they'll somehow be kept safe. What if they're driving and they're texting or something? You know, you pray they'll be safe. You pray for mercy. And I just think there were so many other choices for each of the participants in this tragedy. And now it's too late forever. Anger is murder, Jesus says. Jim gave me this thought. It's a good one. How many times have you ever regretted dialing down the notch? Let's say you found yourself getting angry and then you decided to walk away. Do all those things. Count to 10. You know, take a break. Come back, you know, when you've thought about it. You can have a more calm conversation. How many times have you regretted doing that? How many times have you regretted letting the anger ignite and saying hurtful words? Probably a lot more on that side, right? I noticed that the word anger is one letter away from danger. That's something we can take. I wanted something pragmatic in our message today to take with us, and so here it is. Think about anger as being in the danger zone. How do you get out of the danger zone? Here's 4 steps. First, you control it. You want to control your anger. And we mentioned some of the ways. They're good ways, you know. You want to respect the conversation, so tell that person, you know, I just can't talk about this yet. I'm just, you know, I'm feeling angry and I don't want to lose my temper. Let's find another time to talk about this calmly. And I'll think about what you've said. You know, like the ancient wisdom says, count to 10, walk away.